Horizon just one Suji and this is Lockheed Martin has built 1,000 F-35s. So let's bust some myths. How did I miss this one? This is my channel Sandboxx. Obviously, it was like 1,000 F-35s. That's obviously not for USA itself, like counting other countries as well. But even then, like a lot of them must be for the USA. Like about half of, I don't know how many F-35 US has. But this is counting other countries as well that they're selling it to. 1,000 F-35s, like that's an insane number, especially when you realize like how other planes, like how much the people order, how much they make it. This is just like this is why when you hear about how China has made like what is it, J-35s or whatever, hundreds of numbers, it's like impressive, because that is impressive, but this is ridiculous. 1,000. And it's kind of like recent times as well. It's not like it's accumulation of that long time. It's like past decade plus or something, right? So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, does it count with upgrades or like, I don't know, but it's going to be interesting. This is by Sandboxx. Let's do it.
Lockheed Martin has officially completed production on the 1,000th F-35, making it hands down the most successful stealth aircraft production run in history. In fact, there are more F-35s in the world today than there are all other stealth aircraft ever built by all nations combined. Heck, there are more F-35s on the deck of the USS Tripoli in this single picture than there are stealth fighters in all of Russia. But the F-35 isn't only successful as compared to 5th generation fighters, it's an immense success as compared to older 4th generation fighters as well. In fact, today, the F-35 Lightning II is the 7th most widely operated fighter on the planet. This program began with 9 nations involved in its development, but today its list of buyers has stretched all the way to 17. And in the past few years, F-35s have accumulated some 773,000 hours in the sky, spread out across 469,000 sorties, or individual flights.
Damn, that is insane. Like, when you hear 1,000 planes, you already feel like, oh, that's a big number, 7th of total number, like even compared to the older planes, right? So obviously with the 5th gen, it's like dominant one. And this is why people, this is very weird, isn't it? Because people started like doubting F-35, like it's like jack of all trades, so it's just going to be basic, right? Because it doesn't excel in any one thing, because it does all the things. It's like multi-purpose that way. But it turns out that's not the case, right? They made it in a way that it's just best in a lot of places. Maybe it's not air dominant like F-22, right? But with combined other planes and how it functions, how it can communicate, it's just better. And now you hear about 1,000 plane, implying that they put all their chips into this. It's properly researched, it's properly developed, it is constantly being upgraded, as we already know, right? It's going to be the first 6th generation in a way, before any 6th generation can even come about. So yeah, compared to F-22, when you hear all these things, you just know like, yeah, F-35 is going to be dominant because it's going to be updated all the time. It's going to be like maintaining that way. All the kinks are going to get ironed out because it's that much used, right? So this is first proper modern plane that is like at this scale.
Now, the F-35 has gotten a bad rap in large part because of a very troubled acquisition cycle that I'm on record as calling a downright boondoggle. But despite the production delays and cost overruns, the fighter that emerged from that boondoggle is widely considered to be the most technologically advanced tactical aircraft ever to see service. And I have yet to meet a pilot who's flown in or near an F-35 who's had anything bad to say about these aircraft. In fact, they're generally understood to make older 4th generation fighters significantly more capable just by flying nearby, thanks to their incredible degree of sensor fusion and the data they can securely transmit to other aircraft flying in the vicinity.
And what is this mage of like our like team? It can buff you, it can heal you, there you go. It can feed you data so you're just better. It even makes 4th generation better, there you go.
In other words, the F-35 isn't just a very capable fighter, it's also a force multiplier. But this isn't my first day on the internet, so let's take a minute to respond to the comments that I know a whole bunch of you are already typing under this video, starting with the Russian fanboys who will tell you that all the F-35 does is crash. Now, this is an excellent example of a combination of recency and availability biases. You see, F-35s seem as though they crash often because there are so many of them in the sky on any given day. And the truth is, the F-35 is actually...
Oh, it just hurts like dropping from a ship. Oh, crashing like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even care about the money, just being how technological marvel it is. Seeing something crash, it's like you buy a new car, and it's not like you can't afford like repair and damage. You can afford it, but still, like even a scratch is on that. It's like, what the fuck? That's what it feels like. F-35 crashing like that.
Actually the safest modern fighter ever developed. In fact, if you go back and look at the crash data of the F-35 during its first 12 years of service
yeah, that is so true. If something's, it's just statistic. Humans don't understand statistic that well, at least intuitively. That's the problem, right? Nowadays, you hear about like airplane issues and crashes and a lot. Yeah, but past 8 years, airplane use, like any like flight use, commercial flight use, has exploded. So if there's going to be more flights in the air, even if it's safer and percentage of crashes are lower, the number that you hear about is going to be higher, right? Like 1% of 1,000, right, is 10, sure, right? But you know, like 1% of like, let's just say 100,000 or something like that, number is going to be higher. So just by simple use, a simple like rise of numbers, yeah, the crashes you hear about is going to be higher.
Compared to the A-10, F-15, F-16, or F-22, you'll find that the F-35 has a significantly better track record. By this point in the A-10 service life, F-35 has a significantly better...
Yeah, I'll reverse just to see F-15 number. F-15 is like known for like really badass, right? Like no F-15 was ever like shot down by enemy, at least in air dominance scenarios and things like that. And look at the red line.
Track record. By this point in the A-10 service life, 9% of its airframes had already been lost in accidents. By this point in the F-16s, that number was 13%. But today, the F-35's loss rate is about 1%. The simple truth is, with more than 800 F-35s flying around out there for 14 different nations, there are just a lot more opportunities for one to crash than the 8 or so Su-57s Russia's got in service. All right, how about the folks saying the F-35 is just too expensive to operate? The truth is, there really used to be something to this. As recently as 2016, it was reported that F-35s cost an average of about $67,000 per hour to operate. But
what? F-22 is the cheapest to maintain, to operate per hour? How did that happen? Even though... I mean, you would say like there are not many of them, but that's not the point. Like one plane per hour, what is the maintenance cost? How is it lower? The problem with the F-22 is such a good plane, but it's going to be in like history not being used that much. It's going to be overshadowed by F-35, and like from 10, 20 years from now on, people will basically see like, like good plane, but like nobody going to realize things like this. The Air Force 10 most expensive planes to operate. E4 Night Watch. Why is it such a higher? B2, like that makes sense though, right? C5, open skies. These are just big ass like radar type of planes, I'm guessing. B3 Stratofortress, that also makes sense.
As 2016, it was reported that F-35s cost an average of about
B1 Lancer, even though its payload is the highest of them all bombers, it's like really low. Like that's good.
$67,000 per hour to operate. But Lockheed Martin and the US Air Force have really been trying to drive this figure down in order to be able to afford to operate as many F-35s as the Air Force intends to purchase. And as recently as 2023, that operating cost had been reduced by more than 80%, down to right around $28,000.
Oh, that's... Oh, okay, so it's now better than the F-22 one. And yeah, F-15 and F-16, like F-16 is close to like just 8,000, just like anybody can maintain it, let's just go. Yeah, that makes sense. And Navy Marine Corps, F-18, and yeah. Yeah, 28 is like respectable, especially knowing all the latest technology.
Per hour. Now that's only a little bit more than an F-15. All right, what about those who claim the F-35 can't dogfight? Well, first of all, it probably shouldn't. It was designed to operate like a sniper, but nonetheless, it definitely can. Most of the claims that say it can't dogfight stem from a 2015 report published by War is Boring about an F-35A squaring off in a duel against a Block 40 F-16D. And in that fight, the F-16 definitely came out on top, and the world's media ate that up. But it wasn't until weeks later that the Air Force finally revealed that the F-35 used in that exercise was an airframe known as AF-2. In other words, it was the second F-35 ever built, and it didn't have the vast majority of combat systems F-35s fly with today, including the helmet and electro-optical targeting system.
And yeah, let's not get it twisted, right? Like F-16 is going to be even nimble, right, than F-35. It just makes sense, right? If you're trying to make a plane stealthier, you're going to make compromises in like a lot of places, obviously. So F-16 is going to be kind of nimble. It's probably going to be lighter as well. Like I'm just guessing here, but it's probably going to be the case. Because F-35's, like strengths are not just like, oh, by the way, I see you, now let's fight. That is not F-35's strength, right? F-35 is going to win in a lot of other places. And like, a lot of fighter pilots say like the difference between F-15, F-16 versus F-22 is that when you sit on F-22, like you don't even have to do much. It corrects itself out. All that like fly-by-wire thing, like you don't have to give that much input. It's like, it basically feels modern, like how cars are, right? If you drive a car from the 80s, like even like a bit of like swiveling from the like steering, like it's going to have input. Nowadays, it's like computer will realize what you're trying to do. And it's just car is going to be really smooth. So all that's going to come into play.
System that allows F-35 pilots to target enemy aircraft without having to point the nose of the jet directly at them, as well as the F-35's radar-absorbent skin that would limit the F-16's ability to get a radar lock on its opponent. And to make matters even worse, that particular F-35 was flying with software restrictions on board that prevented the pilot from pushing the airframe too hard, limiting it to under 7G maneuvers, a restriction the F-16 obviously didn't have. In other words, this test article F-35 was forced to fly with both wings tied behind its back, and it ended up losing against one of the most prolific dogfighters in history. That's not really a story. Today's F-35s, on the other hand, have no such limitations, and as such are far more capable in a close-quarters scrap. But if you ask most pilots, they'd still rather avoid that by taking out the enemy before they ever even know it's there. What about the people who say the US spent $1.7 trillion on the F-35 and they're still trying to work out problems? Well, the US hasn't spent $1.7 trillion on the F-35. In fact, nobody has. $1.7 trillion is the estimated total program cost that includes research, development, acquisition, and sustainment and maintenance for the next 50 years to come. $1.7 trillion is the estimated cost for the entire lifetime of the F-35 program, which includes the air...
Yeah, I mean, trillion, we're talking about trillion. That even to me, like, without even thinking, feels like, come on, like, that's a bit too much for a plane. No way that's the case. Yeah, but if lifetime, you're thinking about everything.
Air Force alone operating more than 2,000 of these fighters. In other words, saying the F-35 cost $1.7 trillion is a lot like saying a Ford Mustang costs the sticker price plus the cost of all the fuel you'll ever put in it, every oil change it'll ever get, every brake pad ever installed, and any other repairs that might happen down the road. Technically speaking, that is the overall cost, but to pretend that's the sticker price is downright dishonest. All right, what about the people who say the F-35 has an abysmal readiness rate, and there are so many parts backlogged waiting for repair that the US has been forced to turn to contractors rather than doing those repairs in-house? There is, again, some truth to this, but also some very important context. Now, these claims stem from a Government Accountability Office report published in September of last year that shows how F-35 readiness rates across the DoD sit at around 55%, which definitely isn't great. But most people read the headline.
This is the problem I sometimes think about America and any democracy in general, but America like democracy, which is like kind of like major democracies are like that. You can spend like $800 billion, but because of bureaucracy and like red tape, what if your readiness is not there? When the war happens, even after like you're the number one, you're like untouchable, you spend so much money, because like you can't really like how there was a video about like how US is facing like a aircraft carrier shortage. Why? Because a lot of things are trying to repair itself, and like repair time is longer, and obviously there must be a lot of red tape, there must be some bureaucracy that's slowing things down. What if this is the case where like America falls short in a war? That would be such a big slap in the face, right? Like after being this level dominant, just getting slowed down because of all the stupidity behind it, right? So yeah, people need to think about, like, we are talking about military here. Wars might happen because it's already like popping around the world. How to streamline the process and make it faster, because America's great at logistics. They just need to figure out like how to cut through the red tape and how to like do this better.
Headlines and not the report. The report shows very clearly that one of the biggest reasons why F-35 readiness rates are low is because the F-35 repair depot infrastructure is still under construction, and it's expected to be completed in 2027.
That's the thing, right? Now, I'm not saying like that's not warranted or something, but again, there must be some red tape that is slowing things down. I hear about that all the time. Whenever like people who are trying to work on it always comes out and say like, okay, we would have done this, but something came in the way. A lot of paperwork came in the way, and like it's like a year late or something. Right? Where something like China or something, communist country with not much of democracy, they can just like bypass a lot of things, can build a lot of structures in like basically no time. And I'm not saying that's good, like that's going to cause its own problems. But yeah, there should be middle ground of things, especially when it comes to military and defense.
At which point the F-35's readiness rates are expected to jump across the force to just about comparable with the F-15 and F-16. But I want to be clear that it isn't all good news for the F-35 despite this 1,000th fighter milestone. In fact, today the F-35 program is facing an entirely new batch of technical setbacks and cost overruns, all associated with what's known as Tech Refresh 3. Now, Tech Refresh 3 is effectively a hardware and software upgrade for the aircraft that will provide a 37-fold increase in onboard computing power, 20 times the onboard data storage, and new double redundant display processors with 5 times the power to give the pilots far more situational awareness than ever before. And Tech Refresh 3 is really just an appetizer that will lead to the Block 4 upgrade, which will be such a massive increase in capability that I have long argued the Block 4 F-35 deserves its own designation. This new version of the F-35 will have a newer, even more advanced onboard radar that's rumored to use gallium nitride transmit and receive modules that will dethrone the F-35's current AN/APG-81 radar as the most advanced and powerful radar ever affixed to a fighter. It's also getting a big upgrade to its infrared distributed aperture system with infrared search and track capability, allowing it to target enemy stealth fighters that don't even show up on radar. It's also getting a massive upgrade to its electronic warfare suite, making it one of the most potent EW platforms on the planet. It's increasing its internal weapon storage from 4 weapons to 6, adding a slew of new weapons, both kinetic and cyber, and a bunch of other upgrades that are still classified today. But before any of that can happen, Lockheed Martin's got to get Tech Refresh 3 to work. Now, initially, these hardware and software upgrades were supposed to be installed in every new F-35 rolling off the assembly line starting last April. But the first F-35 with the Tech Refresh 3 systems on board didn't actually take flight until January 6th of this year. And they're now expecting to finish testing of it by April, which means they're about 1 year behind. And make no mistake, every day one of these programs is delayed costs money. So to be clear, the F-35 program is not without shortcomings, and the truth is, no fighter program ever has been. But today, the F-35 is hands down the most technologically advanced fighter on the planet, and once Block 4 emerges, it will be even more capable. In fact, Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall has already stated plainly that in the future, Block 4 F-35s will be flying with their own AI-enabled drone wingmen, just like the 6th generation fighters in development today, meaning the F-35 really will be a bridge to the 6th generation of fighters. At the end of the day, the F-35 was built to be the first to do a lot of things no other fighter had ever done before, and now Block 4 aims to do that all over again, and being the first tends to cost a whole bunch of money. But the F-35 is obviously an extremely capable fighter. Otherwise, 17 nations with acquisition officials who can access classified information about its performance that none of us can wouldn't be lining up to buy it. So the next time somebody tells you the F-35 is a failure or a bad fighter, go ahead and send them this video and remind them that there are 1,000 of them out there now.
It's not gonna make any difference, man. You should know that by now. It's not gonna make any difference. It doesn't matter who you show what.
So, they must be doing something right.
Yeah, you can show all the videos, all the data, but people who just, no, I don't believe it. This is the world we live in. That's the one realization I had in past couple of years. Like, we come to the point where, like, there are a lot of people say, I don't know, no, just no, right? I'm not going to believe anything. This is what I believe, and that's the end of the conversation. Like, okay, I guess we're not going to have a conversation then, right? If you're having an argument with anyone, and like even after like presenting, like if you ask them what is the thing you don't like, and they say like this is this thing I don't like, and you actually give evidence against that, and then they flip something and like present a new issue, at that point like close the conversation, because nothing's gonna matter, right? Doesn't matter what you say, nothing's like, that's a useless conversation at that point. But yeah, this is F-35 is like such a like insane history, right? It started, even the American media picked up on it, like F-35 sucks, F-35 is this, and now it's in the way to becoming the most dominant plane that ever will, right? With the Block 4, it will basically be 6th generation before 6th generation can even be made, right? NG-80 is like delayed now, right? So F-35 Block 4 with like AI drones and shit, like imagine that, right? And like all fly-by-wire, like all the F-22's technology, but better, right? F-35 is going to be insane. And 1,000 F-35s, like, this is the thing, this is the one thing we've noticed since the Industrial Revolution, right? If something is like mass manufactured, it will iron all the problem out, all the kinks out, and it will build up to something big, right? Bigger numbers are always better for things like this. So 1,000 F-35s, they will iron out all the problems. Yeah, there will be setbacks a bit, but eventually, yeah. Right, well, that was Lockheed Martin has built 1,000 F-35s by channel Sandboxx. If you like my content, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.